Hey everybody, welcome back to the module on beliefs. Now, you might have heard me say many times in the past that if there's one skill in my life that's allowed me to make a fortune and help lots of people along the way, it's the power to influence and persuade. See, this is the single skill out of everything I have in my arsenal that allows me to make money and achieve what I want in my life and also give back in meaningful ways. Now, conversely, if there's one element that's caused me the most pain in my life and that it has caused me almost to sabotage my own success at times, it was my beliefs that I had. Essentially, the beliefs about myself, about wealth and success, about money, the way that I managed fear in the process as well. See, your beliefs, and most importantly, the beliefs that you have about yourself, are the single greatest factor that can hold you back from achieving success. And to get more specific, it's the actual beliefs that you have about whether or not you're going to succeed, meaning before you take action, whether you believe that you're going to actually achieve success. Those are the ones that truly affect you the most. For example, you can be in a situation where you have the best tools, the best resources, the best training, and even the opportunity itself is amazing, yet you find yourself not taking action because you simply don't believe that you're going to succeed. And what happens is you're governed by this, essentially this lack of belief, and you end up almost cubbyholing yourself into a far lower level of success than you're truly capable of achieving. You see, the beliefs we have about what we're capable of define our actions more than anything else. If you think I'm a great closer, or I'm an outstanding businessman, or I'm unlucky in love even, those beliefs will actually determine what you'll do in life and what you won't do, and what you'll try and what you'll not try. Now, what happens is your brain actually starts to project forward what it thinks might happen in the future, and this is called future pacing your actions. It thinks about what might happen when you take action and decides whether or not there's actually a good likelihood of success. If your brain decides there's not a good likelihood of success, your brain says, don't do it. Your motivation strategy says, nope, not gonna work, not worth all that effort, too much risk there, and you simply, don't take action. This is why we don't try things that we don't think we're good at or that we don't think we'll truly succeed at. Now, the flip side to this coin is to actually have empowering beliefs about what you're capable of that will propel you to take action. See, for most of us, we're actually capable of much more than we ever can really imagine. Now, let me give you an example here. Imagine that you were truly confident that you could close pretty much anyone who was closable, and then you had this belief you could handle any situation in business that was thrown at you. And now you're dropped into a totally strange, alien environment where you don't know anybody, you don't have any opportunities that are actually obvious right now. I guarantee that somehow you'll still figure out a way to make money because you have that core belief that no matter where I go, what I do, I will figure out a way. In fact, my best friend's father, my friend Alan Lipsky, when we were growing up, his dad used to say, if you flush Jordan down a toilet bowl, he'll end up coming back up with a plumber's license. And what that is, that's the power of what's called self-belief. In other words, you put me in a bad situation, I'll make lemonades out of lemons. And it starts from this idea that I have about myself that, within my arsenal of tools, I pretty much have everything that someone would need to achieve success in any situation. And of course, it starts with the ability to close anyone who's closable. You see, I know that I can close virtually anyone who's closable, and that I've taught thousands of others to do the same. And to me, that really represents the core of a belief that I have that I can succeed in any situation no matter what. And that truly is what propels me to essentially strive for success no matter what obstacles are standing in my way. So, I want to include this module in the training because yes, of course, you're going to dramatically increase your sales with the straight line system, but I also wanted to make sure that you're not sabotaging your own success and that you're actually maximizing your potential for everything just besides business, really to be a better human being and to feel better about yourself each day when you're taking action, to have less fear in your life. I want just to make sure that you felt really, really good in the entire process. Now, the other important piece here is that your prospects also have their own sets of beliefs that sometimes are empowering and sometimes are very disempowering when it comes to whether or not they'll actually end up taking action. See, if you know what's getting in the way for your clients in terms of their beliefs, you can actually help them move past them so there are no roadblocks to them investing in your idea, your product, or your service. So let's start by understanding what a belief really is. A belief represents what you think and feel about the world, and then how you actually view yourself as you move through the world. And in the end, it's all about certainty, meaning your level of confidence that something is definitely true. The more certain you are about something, the stronger your belief is about it. And conversely, the less certain you are about something, the weaker your belief. Now, in essence, who we are as people and how we operate in the world are dictated by the sum of all our beliefs. Now, on the positive side, we have what we call empowering beliefs, which lead us to massive wealth and success. Then we have the disempowering beliefs, which are called limiting beliefs that lead us to misery and poverty and ultimately to total, absolute failure. Now, the bad news is, though, is that at the end of the day, as people, we always end up getting held down by our lowest level limiting belief. Essentially, it's the one at the bottom that stops us from being able to take advantage of all our other empowering beliefs. Let me give you an example here. You could have a Ferrari, a beautiful $250,000 racing machine that's as sleek as hell, cherry red chassis, 500 horsepower engine, 12 cylinders under the hood, 4 valves per, capable of going 250 miles an hour. If you have a governor on the engine stopping the flow of gas, it ain't going over 55. See, that's what a limiting belief does to you. It stops you from charging forward when you should and causes you to pull back when you shouldn't. And the truth is that we all have them. In fact, if you don't think you have a limiting belief, then guess what? You just found your first limiting belief. We all have them. They were literally inserted into us by our parents back when we were kids. And they got reinforced by our teachers, our friends, our enemies, the media, and so on. Now, for the most part, our parents had our best interests at heart, but they made some pretty huge mistakes along the way with some of the beliefs they inserted into us, whether it was about us not being capable of greatness, or money being the root of all evil, or sales being manipulative. Those are just a few examples, some serious limiting beliefs that lots of people have out there. They're just walking around with them. They sit just below the surface, disguising themselves as the facts of life, and they act as silent killers of success. Now, in a few minutes here, I'm going to take you through a very powerful process that will actually root out your limiting beliefs and replace them with empowering beliefs. It's a 4-step process, kind of like a mini workshop within this program. And when we go through it, I'm going to ask you to actively participate in the process. Now, I know that for some of you, these exercises are going to be a little bit uncomfortable or even seem weird, but just trust me. They're incredibly powerful, and they'll have a massive impact on both your sales results and your personal life as well. So I want you to really go for it and not hold back. I want you to get that result you're looking for. And then once you do, once you have that limiting belief replaced by an empowering belief, you're going to be in great shape. Okay, so let's back up for a second here. Now, as I said earlier, a belief is simply an idea or a concept that we feel really, really certain about. For example, when I say I'm a great salesman, that's actually just a belief. It's not a fact of life. You get it? It's just my belief. Now, truth be told, this is actually a bit more than just a plain old belief. For me, it's a conviction at this point in my life because I have so many references about being an outstanding salesperson, meaning there's so many experiences I've had of being a top producer and breaking company sales records that there's really nothing you could say to me to sway me away from that belief. I simply know it to be true at the core level, at the deepest level. It's a conviction. Now, a weaker belief for me might be something like, I'm good at basketball, I'm a really good baseball player. I mean, yeah, I know I'm a decent at it, but if someone tried to talk me out of it, it wouldn't be impossible to make me think otherwise, especially if the person were an authority figure in that particular field. See, the point I'm making is that what actually makes a belief powerful are the references or the experiences that we have to support it being true. The more positive references, the more certain we are that our belief is empirically correct, and the less likely we are to have someone convince us otherwise. But again, and this is where the real irony is the thing that so many of us fail to realize is that no matter how certain we are that something's actually true, it still doesn't make it a fact of life. It's still just a belief disguising itself as a fact of life. Imagine it this way. Let's say you have a table with a tabletop and 4 legs. The idea is that when I say I'm a great salesman, that's the tabletop right here. And then I have all these experiences from the past that tell me this is true. Like I was a top producer in this situation, and again in this other situation, or I trained many, many salespeople. I was written up in the media. I made millions of dollars. All of those are references or legs, so to speak, that support the tabletop. The more experiences or references that you have, the more legs you have that are actually holding up the tabletop, and the more sturdy it becomes. The power of the belief doesn't actually rest in the idea itself, but in the references that support it. Make sense? For instance, let's say you have a limiting belief that you're not great as a salesperson. So what do you say to yourself? What's your inner dialogue? You'd say things like, well, I'm not a born salesman, or I'm not that charismatic, or people don't respond well to me, or I can't hold a person's attention. That's all your self-talk. And then I would say to you, okay, well, that's an idea you have about yourself, or maybe an opinion, but the question really is why? Why do you think that way about yourself? And you might say, well, it's because in the past I remember being in this situation where people either walked away from me or didn't buy from me. Or I remember a time when someone said, you have no charisma, John, or you should really get out of the sales business altogether because you kind of suck at it, or whatever it might be. And what those are just experiences from the past that probably caused you some pain back in the day, so you kept thinking about them and dwelling on them, and eventually what ended up happening was they reinforced themselves by stopping you from taking action that might have put you back in that same situation where you could improve yourself. It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So now if you want to change that belief, the first thing I'd ask you to do is, number one, say, does that belief actually serve me? Yes or no? Is it making my life better or worse? And the answer to that is obviously no, which then makes it a limiting belief. And by the way, if you have any doubt about whether things like sales and charisma are certainties or they're just beliefs, then let me just say this. I have a newsflash for you. Charisma and sales, they can both be learned. They are entirely learnable skills, and I teach both of them to people every day all over the world. They become top producers brimming with charisma. However, if you're stuck with the belief that says, I don't have charisma or I'm incapable of being a salesman, well then guess what you'll do? You'll act in direct accordance with that belief, and you'll refuse to put yourself in a situation where you might have a chance to speak in public or sell anything or even take a course about sales. Now, conversely, if I were to try to convince you that you actually did have charisma, I would never say, oh, that's just not true, John. You actually do have charisma. You just got to forget that nasty little voice inside your head that's been lying to you all these years. It's just a limiting belief. And I can never ask you to say to me 10 times loud, I have charisma, I have charisma, I have charisma, or it's not true, it's not true, it's not true, I do have charisma. It would never work. You just can't wish away a limiting belief. I used to do this thing in seminars where I'd have a wooden table and actually have a cricket bat I'd be holding. And I'd say, watch, my limiting belief was that my past would always haunt me. My past would always haunt me. That was my tabletop, essentially. And the references I had, or my legs, were some of the bad articles that had been written about me many years ago. Or perhaps a passing comment I'd heard or someone made to me, or a bad interview I had on a radio station. I had all these references, so to speak, and all these experiences I had that made me truly believe that my past would always haunt me. So for me just to try to say, my past will not always haunt me, my past will not always haunt me, it's just simply not going to work. So I'd say to the people in the audience, now watch, if I want to break that belief, I can't simply wish it away by saying my past will not always haunt me. It's like taking this bat and smashing the idea from the top. And then I'd actually take the cricket bat and I'd hit the table and it'd make this giant thud and shake wildly, but it wouldn't break. Then I'd hit it again, even harder, and then hit it harder again, and again it wouldn't go down. The tabletop would still stand. And then I'd say the way you break a limiting belief is you go after the legs and you knock them right out. Now in this case, I could remember that there were actually lots of positive articles about me as well. And the bad ones were usually written by someone that had an agenda against me or was just trying to sell newspapers. In other words, what I did was I actually went back to the past and I re-examined the experiences and I applied a new meaning to them by changing the language of my own thoughts. I actually re-experienced things and I came up with an empowering meaning to the memory versus a disempowering meaning. See, we give meanings to everything around us based on language, based on the words that we say in our self-talk. For example, someone might write a negative article about me, and I could say, oh, that's such a terrible article, and I could feel crappy about it. Or I could say, woohoo, any press is good press, and I could be happy. See, the language that you apply to whatever happens to you in life creates the meaning. The experience is the experience. Very often, though, what happens is that we draw the incorrect meaning because we were feeling disempowered at the time. We were young, or someone in a position of authority said something hurtful to us. Maybe we went to pick up a girl and she rejected us. We went into a business like I did in the meat and seafood industry, and I failed. And I thought to myself, well, maybe I'm just not entrepreneur material. I don't have what it takes. And that's just from one failure. And it's almost never true. See, in my case, it was just that I didn't know the skills of being an entrepreneur. That's why I failed. It's not that I wasn't entrepreneur material. The problem was that the words I was saying to myself at the time, though, were incorrect. You get it? See, we draw incorrect meanings all the time, and they end up holding us back from being the best we can be in the future. The good news, though, is that we can actually go back and re-experience these times from a position of strength, and then change the language by simply looking at things from a different angle. See, the bottom line is this, and you might have heard this before: when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Let me repeat that. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Now, in my case, I went back to the negative experience and said, wait a second, that journalist, she was an idiot. She was just trying to sell newspapers. What does she know about me? And then I remember there was this one professor who didn't want me to speak at his school in the beginning when I first went on the speaking tour, because of what had happened to me. And yet now they beg me to come to Harvard and Stanford and Yale, and they'll pay me $50,000 plus an hour. And that was before the movie of my life was in production. So again, I go back to the experience and say, now what about that person? What caused them to be so negative towards me? Well, maybe they had their own agenda, maybe their own stuff going on, maybe they were fighting their own demons from the past, and it made their message slightly impure. You see, one by one, here's what I did. I went back to these experiences that were bothering me, and I gave them new meanings, and bam, it was like knocking out the legs of the table. And just like that, I'd go back to that table at the seminar, I'd take a swipe at the leg, and boom, almost with no effort, the table would fall. Now, the reason this works so well scientifically is because the unconscious mind is so powerful that to change a belief, all you have to do is go back to the first experience, the root experience, and change its meaning by looking at it from a more empowering point of view. Then, once you've done that and you've essentially re-examined that experience from an empowered state, then as you move forward, the rest of the experiences that resulted from that, they automatically rearrange themselves in your brain in light of the new meaning. Now, in my case, I actually went back to my meat business days when I failed that first time, and I said to myself, it's not that I wasn't entrepreneur material, I just didn't know a few things. Maybe I didn't know about cash flow and over-expanding, and perhaps I wasn't that good at screening out my salesmen. These are basic skills that an entrepreneur must have. But back then, I didn't have them. See, now as an educated adult, I could say, yeah, I didn't have those proper resources back then, didn't have the training at the time. But back in the day when I originally created that belief, they were in the middle of towing away my Porsche and I was going bankrupt. And when that was happening, I was obviously thinking some pretty lousy things about myself, not the least of which was, maybe I'm not entrepreneur material. See, here's what we tend to do. We tend to draw meanings about things at some of the worst times in our lives, and they end up sticking with us and getting caught in this web, this cycle of limiting beliefs. And the challenge is that once you have a limiting belief, it actually scours the environment for proof that it's true, and it deletes out anything that perceives not to be true. And the important word there is perceives not to be true. Now, in the case of the woman who wrote that negative article about me, I had all these positive articles that had been written about me as well, but I deleted them. I focused instead on the negative one, because what a belief does, it causes your mind to essentially scour the environment to look for evidence to support itself. And if it's not there, by the way, it'll simply make stuff up. Your belief will actually skew, distort your judgment, even change your visual acuity, and you'll actually start making things up to support your limiting belief. And once you start doing that, you'll develop even more references that are toxic. And before you know it, you find yourself living inside a box that's been constructed from your own limiting beliefs, one on top of the other, on top of the other. Now listen, we all have limiting beliefs. So let's start going through these beliefs right now. Now, this is where we're going to start the workshop portion of this module, so it's going to be a bit more interactive from here on out. Now, what we're going to do here in the first part is take the beliefs that you had that up until now have been sitting just below the surface, disguising themselves as the facts of life, and we're going to bring them up above the surface and expose them for what they are, which is just beliefs. Now, for simplicity's sake, let's just start with one area of your life like money, and you can do this with any area of your life, but I want to pick an area that affects every salesperson, something like money, which is going to have a huge direct impact on your drive to become a top producer and actually stay there when you get there. So right now, I want you to think about a limiting belief you have about money and write it down. And it could be any belief about money that limits you. For example, that making big money is hard to do. And by the way, it's just as easy to make big money as it is to make small money. That's a fact. There's no difference. But this might be a limiting belief for you about money. Or maybe something like, if I make a lot of money, I'll have to neglect my family. Or something like, money is the root of all evil. Or if I go out there and I make money, people will think I'm greedy or they won't like me. Or if I make money, I lose my connection with God. These are all limiting beliefs about money. So think about it now and write one down, just one limiting belief that you have about money, and then write a second limiting belief that you have about yourself and money. For example, maybe I'm not good with money, or money tends to slip through my fingers. Those are some examples of beliefs that we have that hold us back about ourselves and money. Now, once you've identified those beliefs, and again, please write them down, we're going to start to notice how these beliefs have limited you in the past. What are the negative consequences, essentially, that you have from these beliefs? You see, every belief has consequences. If you say to yourself, I'm not good with money, the consequence is that you typically won't have a lot of it. There are consequences to all your beliefs. So once you've identified your limiting beliefs, I want you to think about and write down the consequences of the two limiting beliefs you came up with. And if you need some time here, you can pause this video and take a few minutes to do this, to search your memory essentially, and write down the consequences of your limiting beliefs. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is there was actually a study in the linguistics department at a major university where they did what's called functional magnetic resonance imaging. And this is a fancy way of saying that they were actually imaging the brain of someone as it was working to see what parts were activated. And what they found when they did this is that when you activate the memory of a belief, it actually sets you up to change the belief more effectively. So if I just was to go up to you and say, hey, do you have a limiting belief you want to get rid of? Great, let's fix it. It wouldn't work nearly as well or be nearly as effective if we actually activate the belief like we're doing now neurologically. And it starts by you having a desire to change the belief. That's why I had you identify the belief's consequences and start creating seeds of doubt that the belief wasn't actually true. Now that we've identified your limiting beliefs and their consequences, we want to start questioning these beliefs and creating more doubt. Now, there are two questions you're going to answer here. Specifically, for one of the beliefs you identified, ask yourself, how is this belief not true? For example, if the belief is the money is the root of all evil, you want to start thinking of examples where this isn't true. Maybe you can think about Bill Gates spending his money helping people in Africa, or Oprah Winfrey building her girls' school. Try to identify at least 3 or 4 reasons for each limiting belief as to why it might not be true. And by the way, I'd like you to do this right now. Of course, you can go back and answer these questions after the video is over, but it's better if you do it now, in the moment. Go ahead and pause the video and take the time to answer each piece as I go through it. You'll get a better result that way. So here you'd be saying, who would I be without this limiting belief? And how would my life be better? And write down all the positive feelings you'd have as a result of them. For example, I'd feel more empowered if I had more money in my life, or I'd feel like jumping out of bed each morning and going to work. I'd feel full of energy. Write those down now. Now, we're almost done with this part now, so here's what I want you to do. And this is very important. I want you to contrast the two things, the consequences of your old limiting belief with how much better your life would be without this limiting belief. Now, to do this, you go back and I want you to look at the consequences you wrote for one of your old limiting beliefs, review it quickly, and then look at who you identified you would be without this limiting belief and how much better your life would be. Now, keep going back and forth, read the old belief and its consequences, then quickly snap to what you wrote down about who you'd be without this limiting belief. Go back and forth, do this a few times, who you are with the belief and who you knew you could be without this limiting belief. So far, we've identified your beliefs from both a cognitive standpoint and from an intellectual standpoint. But to really create the change, we have to go a bit deeper here. We have to get to some consequences on a very deep emotional level. So in the next part, I want you to actually feel some pain that's associated to this old belief. It's important for you to understand at a core level how much you need to get rid of this belief and what it's been costing you throughout most of your life. And you might want to go somewhere prior for this part of the training if you're not already there, so you're free to both act and react in whatever way supports you. Now, there are some programs where they do this and they want you to, cry and scream and feel awful amounts of pain. I don't want you to go to that spot. You don't need to, okay? But we need to feel some basic, emotional consequences here and some, basic pain in the stomach. I want you to drop this belief and replace it with the empowering belief. I want you to close your eyes and I want you to really associate into what I'm saying here. So take a deep breath and then exhale slowly and close your eyes. And we're going to think about the consequences of these limiting beliefs. Now, I want you to go back to an experience in your life. Maybe you're in your 20s and maybe you're in a relationship with a man or woman, your husband, your wife, and your husband or wife left you. Or maybe you got evicted and you had to move in with a friend and you just felt awful. Whatever it was for you, go back and really dig into that right now and feel the pain for a moment. And think about the belief you created as a result of it. What does this belief cost you? How much does it hurt you? How much has it embarrassed you? How many times have your kids wanted you to buy them toys or take your family on a vacation, but you couldn't do it? You didn't have the money. How many times did you want to give money to charity or you saw people in the street who needed money, but you just didn't have any to give yourself? Go back and remember how awful it felt not to be able to do what you wanted to do in life. How much did it hurt you? How much did it affect your life? How did it affect your family, your children, and any aspect of your life, especially your children? How many times did your limiting beliefs set a negative example for the people you love most? How many times did it cause pain to the people you love most? Just go back and key in on that one spot and amplify the pain. Amplify the embarrassment of being poor, being broke, poverty-stricken, feeling uncertain. Maybe your kids watch you and your spouse fight over money. I watch my parents fight over money all the time. I watch my dad struggle to pay the bills. My parents worked long hours. My mom left each day to go to work. I was a latchkey kid. I was scared as hell to go to my house at 6 years old when she had to go to work. I was scared. Maybe you've left your kids alone before you should have because of some belief that you had that has stopped you from having money. Just dig into that pain now a little bit more. Take a deep breath and let that pain wash over you for just a moment. There's no nobility in poverty. Being poor sucks. You can't help anybody when you're poor, when you're disempowered. You can't empower anybody if you yourself are broke. See, money's a wonderful tool. The times you didn't have it, you hurt people, and probably most of all, you hurt yourself. So really think about this for a moment and associate into the consequences of these limiting beliefs of not having money. Really get yourself there and feel the pain of these limiting beliefs and what they've cost you in your life. And once you're there and feeling fearless for a moment, you can open up your eyes now. So what we've done is we've activated certain parts of your brain, the deepest recesses of your memory, and we linked pain to the old belief. We could have done it a lot more deeply, but this is enough. I just wanted to give you a little bit of pain so it gives you the motivation to propel yourself away from it. Here's what we're going to do now. For part 2, we're going to do what's called a timeline regression. Now, it's not hypnosis in any way, so don't worry. You're not going to be hypnotized. You're going to be in a heightened state of awareness, and you'll be in complete control of all your thoughts. The only thing you're giving power to here is your own subconscious mind, which is infinitely more powerful than your conscious mind, and it will always protect you. I'll guide you through this process, but remember that it's you who are in control every single moment. Now here's what we're going to do. We're going to create your timeline again, that line that goes forward and back through time, and we're going to actually cruise backwards, float back in time until you find that root experience, that first experience you had that created the limiting money belief that you have. Whatever that first experience was, maybe you heard your parents say something, maybe you had a bad experience with your first big sale, whatever it might be that caused you to create this negative belief that's personal to you. And then we're going to have you re-experience that belief, except you're going to experience it now, in the present, with the resources of the adult that you are now. Remember, you have access to all the resources that you need. In other words, the unconditional love, certainty, courage, compassion, power, faith, confidence, determination, and the clarity of all these resources that are available to you now. You can take these back in time with you when you re-experience this limiting belief. So you're going to take these new resources with you in this little bubble. We're going to imagine a little helicopter bubble. It's a bit corny, I know, but it works. And you're going to float back in time, and you're going to create what's called the safety sandwich, meaning I'm going to have you go to a spot literally just 5 minutes before the limiting belief was created, the negative experience, and then 5 minutes afterwards. And then we're going to float forward, and you're going to re-experience the actual memory, but this time you'll experience it with those new resources available to you. Now, we're not wiping out your memory by any means. What we are going to do is have you change the language so you can apply a new meaning to that root experience. After we've gone through that belief 2 or 3 times, changing the language, we're then going to actually float up towards the present. And I'll be talking to you as we're doing this. See, what happens is that your brain, your unconscious mind, automatically rearranges the meanings from all the other experiences after that root experience. Now, the great thing is you don't have to go through every single experience and change each individual meaning. It's just that first root experience, the initial trigger that created the root of the limiting belief. Then, when you reach the present, I'm going to actually have you go forward into the future and have you see yourself acting on the new belief, the more empowering belief. You'll see yourself doing stuff without the limiting belief, and you'll see yourself feeling great with this new belief. And what this is called is future pacing a belief, meaning we float into the future and you see yourself acting on this new empowering belief. And you'll actually see yourself doing stuff without this limiting belief and feeling great. So let's begin now. Now, I want you to sit in a comfortable position, feet flat on the floor, hands in your lap, and take a deep breath in and let it out slowly. Now do it again, and let your eyes gently close. Now you're going to take a little trip here. Your unconscious mind may or may not be involved. Let everything go and know that your unconscious mind will keep you safe and only wants the best for you. So you can totally relax. Now, as you sit in your chair, noticing how your feet feel as they touch the floor, your hands feel as they gently rest on your lap, your back resting against the chair, the feel of the air on your skin, and the sound of my voice all helping you be very comfortable. Make any small adjustments that you may need in order to be as comfortable as possible and to relax more deeply now. And as you sit in the chair, get a sense of where you are in this moment, sitting here in this room with your eyes closed right now. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to point to a place where you would feel that the present moment is for you. If you had to say where you see the present moment right now, where would it be? For some people, it's in front of them. For others, it's inside them, or beside them, or even behind them. Once you have a sense of where the present moment is for you, point to it now. That's right. Now, think of a moment from today. Maybe you're getting ready to come to work. Maybe you're waking up and brushing your teeth, or getting dressed, or driving to work. Remember one moment from earlier today. If you had to point to where that moment was, where it occurred, where would it be? Get a sense of exactly where that moment shows up for you. Is it behind you? Is it beside you, to your left, to your right? Is it lower or higher? Point to exactly where that memory of this morning is for you. And again, there's no right or wrong answer. It's wherever you feel that moment is for you. Now, I want you to remember something pleasant that happened maybe a year ago. Perhaps a birthday or a trip that you had with your family or someone that you loved and cared about, or a moment of great success or happiness. I want you to see and feel that memory as clearly as you possibly can. Where were you? What were you doing? Who else was there with you? What did you see? Notice if your eyes are looking in a particular direction as you remember that moment. Where does that memory show up for you? When I say so, point to the place where that memory appears for you. On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Point to that memory of a year ago. Now, see your timeline of the past extending from where you are now through the point you saw this morning, through the point you saw the memory of a year ago. Now put your hand down and come back to the present moment. Feel yourself back in the chair, sitting comfortably. And as you sit there, imagine yourself a year from now, in the future. Where will you be? What will you be doing? What will you be seeing, hearing, feeling? Notice how your eyes move to a particular spot as you visualize your future a year from now. When I say so,
Point to the place where that vision of the future is for you. 1, 2, 3, point to the future. That's right. Now see your future timeline extending from your present, from where you are right now, through your vision of a year from now into your future. With your eyes closed now, use your finger to trace the line from the present moment to a year from now, then off into your distant future. That's right. Now, use your finger to trace your entire timeline from the present back to the past, then back to the present, and then off into the future. Now back to the present, and then back into your past, to the present, and then to the future. That's right. That's your timeline. Now, I want you to imagine that you're floating up above your body, about 6, 8 feet above your body, and that you're inside one of those glass helicopter bubbles. And notice that inside the bubble, there are a couple of buttons. These are your controls. One of them is a stick, like a joystick for moving this way or that way, like in a video game. You can go left, right, forward, back. And the more force that you put on the joystick, the faster you'd move. I want you now to just take this handle, have a little fun with it for a second, and just cruise around the room that you're in right now using this joystick. And just know that you could take this thing wherever you want. You're the best pilot in the world. Just cruise around for a minute or so, 30 seconds is enough. Just cruise around your little helicopter bubble, this glass bubble, and just cruise outside now around the city or town that you're in, and go outdoors for a bit. Just have a bit of fun here. You can just jet right out, and you can go as fast as you possibly want and cruise all the way around. And now what I want you to do is this. In your helicopter bubble, you're safe. You're completely safe in this bubble. I want you to turn around so you're facing your past, and now slowly, I want you to push forward on your joystick and start heading back into the past. And maybe move up a bit now, perhaps 12 to 15 feet above your timeline, so you're looking downward at your past. Now notice how you see all the events of your life as points along that timeline, moments and events that shape you both for good and for ill, haven't they? And remember that you are above your timeline, experiencing these moments from a distance. You're not actually in them, so you're not really feeling them viscerally. You can see things almost objectively. And as you're floating above your past timeline, I want you to remember that old negative limiting belief that you wrote down, the belief that you said you want to get rid of, the one that had an experience attached to it. Something that happened that caused you to adopt that belief as being true. Float along the timeline into the past and see the events of your life passing underneath you until you come upon the earliest moment that you can remember when you first had that limiting belief. And I want you to float back to that earliest memory you have, an early experience that might have formed the actual root of this limiting belief. This is called your root experience. And when you get there to this root experience, I want you to hover over it. It might be a dark spot, not overly dark, but it might very well be a dark spot. I want you to float over that limiting belief and just hover right there. And as you look down at that belief, that experience, notice that inside the helicopter, you have some other buttons as well. One button is for certainty. Another is for knowledge. Another is for unconditional love. And at any moment that you want, right now, you can push any one of these buttons and give yourself that resource. It will just simply wash over you, and you will be awash in that resource. Sometimes we flow backwards and we think that we found the root experience, but in fact we haven't, because when we get there and look at it, it wakes something else up inside us. And then we realize that there's actually something that happened even before this. So take another deep breath right now, and I want you to float backwards again and see if you can find an even earlier experience. If you can't, then just float back to this one. But if you could float back further, when I count to 10, if you're not sure where you're going, your unconscious mind will automatically put you exactly where you need to be. Remember, your unconscious mind's much more powerful. So even if you can't remember yourself consciously, your unconscious mind remembers exactly where this root experience is. So when I count to 10, you're going to stop right there, hovering right above that first root experience that caused you to have this limiting belief. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You're there. Your unconscious mind always knows. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to actually form what's called a safety sandwich. So we're going to go back 2 or 3 minutes, maybe even 5 minutes before this experience, and when you get there, I want you to stop and put a little marker there. And make it a white marker so you know that it's before this belief ever happened. And notice that any feelings that you may have had are gone now because this experience hasn't even happened yet. And the reason you put a little marker there is so we can get back there if you ever need to. Now I want you to float up a little bit higher, maybe 12 feet above the line, and cruise forward slowly, looking at this experience, not drawing any meanings to it right now, but I want you to float forward until about 3 minutes after this experience. Now, it could be even further, maybe even a week after this experience, whatever time it takes you when you no longer feel the effects of that experience that first caused this limiting belief. So yes, you have the belief now because you've experienced it, but you're not feeling uncomfortable. You feel safe again. It was a negative experience, it's over. If you need to go, again, 5 minutes later, 15 minutes later, a week later, that's fine too. But I want you to have a safe place to go on both sides of the experience, before and after. And when you get to that spot after the experience and you're comfortable, put down a white marker there too, a little white line, thick white line, and notice that you have these 2 lines now, and turn around so you're now facing the past. I want you to float up to your first white line before the experience happened now. I want you to turn around forward in your helicopter bubble so you're now facing towards the present. And I want you to understand that right now, while we don't have the power to change our memories, we certainly have the power to change the meanings that we draw from them. And before we move forward and relive this experience, I want you to push any of the buttons that you think you need. Confidence, clarity, compassion, courage, faith, love. Doesn't matter what it is, compassion, anything you need, whatever resource you need, push the button and notice how you become awash in this resource. Just seems to flow all over you, every pore of your body. Now notice inside this bubble, there's a button very far on the right. I want you to press that button now and notice at the bottom door, a little hatch opens up, and you can actually exit the helicopter and float down to your timeline. Press that button now. I want you to descend outside the helicopter and float down with all the resources that you need. Go right down to that little white line where you're safe. You're floating in the air just a foot or 2 above the line, right there in the scene, and I want you to relive this experience again. See what people were doing, hear what they were saying, except this time, rather than drawing the wrong conclusion that caused you to have that limiting belief, I want you to draw a new meaning, an empowering meaning. And as you cruise forward, you could even laugh a bit, just chuckle to yourself, and you'll notice how with the resources of an adult, with clarity, confidence, courage, unconditional love, as you relive this experience and float forward, you begin to draw a new, empowering meaning. And now relive this experience. As you see the people doing what they were doing, you're listening, maybe you were acting in this scene, notice how the meaning begins to change in light of the new learnings. And slowly float forward now. And over a period of 15 seconds, I want you to relive this experience so you're right back at the front end of your safety sandwich. And as you float forward, notice how your perspective has changed. There's a new meaning being applied in light of the new learnings. And in 10 seconds, you'll reach the front end and notice how the meaning has changed as you came from a perspective of truth. Now that you have the truth on your side and you have the resources from the perspective of truth, it's an entirely different meaning that you draw from this experience. Now you're at the front end. Float up off the line and turn backwards and flip around. Zip right back to the first part of the safety sandwich. Flip around, right there in the beginning again, and turn forward facing the present. I want us to go through this experience again now and notice how the meaning has changed from the perspective of absolute truth that you now have in light of your new learnings. And run through this experience again. Go through it right now, except this time, do it in 8 seconds. When I get to 8, you'll be at the front end of your safety sandwich. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You're safe again in the front. Now I want you to float up again, face backwards, and go back to the beginning of the safety sandwich. And I want you to do this again in 5 seconds now this time. I want you to notice how different you feel, though, as you go forward in 5 seconds, and you relive this again, how liberated you feel, and how much lighter you feel, how this belief that you once had from this root experience no longer even has power over you. And float forward, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, float back up and go back to the beginning of your safety sandwich, the absolute beginning. Relax and take a deep breath. And notice now as we float forward, again, one more time, slowly this time, see your younger, more confident self now with a new meaning, except this time, if there's anybody else in the scene that could use the same resources that you have right now, I want you to lend them those resources. And notice how the people begin to act differently now that they have the perspective of truth. And as you run through this scene again, notice how not only your meaning has changed, but the players themselves are drawing the new meanings from this experience. Do this in 10 seconds. Float forward. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now float back up. Go back to the beginning of your safety sandwich and turn forward now. And the quicker you float forward, notice how the memories have now changed. The meanings have changed in light of the new learnings. And when you get just to the present, I want you to stop. And now floating, turn around and face your past, and any of those dark points from this limiting belief are now light. Those new meanings have been applied. Notice how you don't need any resources now because you're feeling great and you're no longer in the bubble. You're just floating freely and it feels perfectly okay. And now turn around so you're facing the future. And I want you to float forward about 2 weeks into the future and see yourself acting with this new belief. In other words, you don't have that limiting belief anymore. You have the opposite belief. And notice how you see yourself active and feeling better in light of the new learning and not having this limiting belief anymore, and how much more fluid you feel and how you're attracting massive success in sales into your life. See what you'll be seeing, feel what you'll be feeling, and now float even further forward to a year from now. And notice how you've started to accumulate money from all this massive success in sales, and see yourself acting and being wealthy and feeling wealthy and not being bogged down by that limiting belief anymore. Now float forward a couple of years, maybe 5 years into the future. And again, now see how this massive success in sales has changed your life. You're massively wealthy. You've closed a major sale. You've opened a new account. See yourself and how you'd act no longer having that limiting belief. And notice how it feels good. Give yourself this gift for a few seconds. And now float up a bit more and turn around so you're now facing the past future, the future past. And notice how everything that's happened in the last 5 years is exactly as it should be. The obstacles, the barriers, they were still there, but the limiting belief was not. So you were able to overcome all those barriers and obstacles. And now slowly start floating back towards the present, and you see yourself looking down. You see yourself sitting in the chair, and slowly float back into the room inside your body and stay there for a second. Take a couple of deep breaths, and when you feel comfortable, slowly open your eyes and just notice how great you feel, how empowered you feel in light of the new learnings. And the limiting belief is now gone, replaced with the empowering belief.
Remember, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And let me tell you something, this is an incredibly powerful thing you just done. Even if you don't sense anything right now, I promise you that there's been a profoundly positive impact on your overall psychology, especially when it comes to wealth creation. You see, the straight line system is that X factor that will allow you to achieve another level of sales success. And it starts with making sure that you have the belief and the certainty within yourself that you'll succeed at the highest level using this system. As you go through the critical incident scenarios, be vigilant as to what's going on with any limiting beliefs you may have created need to be uprooted and replaced with empowering beliefs. The most important thing you can take away from this module is that you've got to stand guard at the door of your own mind. If there's something you're not following through on in this training or in any area of your life, chances are it's because you have a belief that's stopping you. Something's getting in the way and causing you to falsely believe that you don't really have what it takes to succeed. You've got to uproot these negative beliefs and replace them with empowering beliefs. Otherwise, it's like a cancer that will continue to grow and grow, and it'll ultimately stop you from going out and doing the things you know you should be doing to succeed at the level you truly deserve. Remember, the beliefs we have about what we're capable of end up defining our actions.
The things that you say out loud, the things that you feel in your heart have massive impact on what you do or don't do in your life. And they're based, all of them, on your beliefs. Beliefs you may have created at some point in your life to try to protect yourself, and you're not even aware that you have them anymore. But these beliefs are affecting you, and they no longer serve you. Lastly, I hope this session not only unblocks anything that may have been holding you back from a sales standpoint, but it also frees you up to experience all you deserve in the other areas of your life as well.
Hi, I'm Jordan Belfort. Welcome to the Straight Line Sales Training System, the science behind achieving massive sales results in the shortest time possible. The way this cutting-edge system works is by combining the most advanced techniques in behavioral science with an astonishingly effective system of sales and influence, allowing you to dramatically ramp up your closing rate and develop customers for life. This program represents over 25 years of real-world business experience, which started in what's probably the most competitive market in the world, namely Wall Street, and then combining it with the cutting-edge science of what separates the absolute best salespeople in the world from people who can't basically sell their way out of a paper bag. Now, we've spent literally hundreds of hours doing detailed clinical trials, and what we've been able to prove is that with this process, we can take virtually any salesperson in any industry and dramatically ramp up their closing rate, shorten their sales cycle, increase their upsell results, and radically improve their ability to bring in a steady stream of customer referrals. Among other things, this program is going to help you discover your strengths as a salesperson and show you how to build on them. And also, it will show you how to identify your weaknesses as a salesperson, for which will give you a step-by-step action plan for instantly shoring them up, so you can raise the level of your game in a very big way and start closing more sales in a more elegant and stress-free fashion. Now, if you're a sales manager, what you'll notice with the straight line system is that because it's so easy to learn and it's so duplicatable within your sales force, it's not just going to elevate each salesperson's results individually, but also the results of your entire sales force as a unit. See, when each salesperson is doing the things the same way, with the same outcome in mind, everyone starts learning from each other, they start feeding off each other's energy, and before you know it, bam, you find yourself running the top sales force in your industry. Bottom line.
Now, like I said, your standards are where you end up in life. But here's the danger. Let's say you have a standard that you want to make $1 million a year US. And let's say in the real world you actually drop below that standard and you're making $700,000 US. And what you're doing is not working. You're trying to get back up that $1 million, but it seems no matter what you do, it doesn't make a difference. You just can't get ahead. After a while, your brain will say, you know what, this is no good. I have so much pain here, and you'll actually lower your own standard if you feel too much pain. Then what happens is it becomes a vicious cycle that starts to get worse and worse and worse. And before you know it, you'll say, man, you know, this whole thing is not working. I'm just trying so hard. I'm not getting anywhere. And this sort of negative feedback loop starts happening. And before you know it, you start lowering your standard a bit more, a bit more, a bit more. And then you almost find yourself living in that life of what's close to poverty, in this sort of totally disempowered state where you're not getting the things you want in a life and essentially not really living life even close to the highest level. Listen, your standards are crucial. They represent your musts in life, the bottom line. So one of the things we're going to do here is actually identify what your standards currently are. And then we'll look at whether or not they suit your vision. In other words, does your standards match your vision? And if they don't, we're going to raise them, and I'll show you exactly how to do that. Now, before I go any further here, there are two sides to this equation I want to go through. One side is people who have incredibly high standards, but they actually lack the skill sets in the real world to make their standards a reality. Then you have the other side of the equation, which is someone that has really, really low standards, but they have tons of skill. In both situations, what you have essentially is dissonance, right? In one case, high standards, but you need to learn stuff in order to really make those standards a reality. Else, eventually what will happen is what? You'll go out there, try something, fail at it, and eventually lower your standards. Or you might have really, really high standards, and you lack the skill, and you end up feeling pain on top of pain on top of pain because, you know, what your musts are not materializing in the real world,
right? So essentially, again, what you'll do is you'll eventually drop your standards to match what your real-world skill level is. And even worse than that is this sort of this X factor with standards, is that occasionally life, throws us these little setbacks, and all of a sudden, life, bam, hits you between the eyes with some really, really awful news. You might lose a job, find yourself in a bad financial situation, and all of a sudden, what started as a little bit of a downward spiral becomes a massive downward spiral, and you find yourself winding up in that negative box, so to speak, of poverty, of, a disempowered life, and really becoming a person at the lowest level of standards, which is really poor standards. So let's start by defining exactly where your standards are right now, and then we'll look at how you can increase them. And this is called turning your shoulds into musts. What does that mean? Well, your musts are the things in life that you must have. You see, we always get our musts, but we very seldom get our shoulds. In fact, the word should is the most disempowering word in the English language. To say I should have this or I should have that. I mean, in my world, either you must have something or you really don't need it in your life. As the saying goes, if you keep using the word should, you end up shoulding all over yourself, okay? You need to reframe that word should and turn it into the word must. Now, going from poor standards to average standards, or average standards to good standards, both of these represent a giant leap up. But the next level up is what we call excellent standards. And again, this is another pretty big leap up from good standards. And really, this is about being the best you can be every single day. It's that level where you're, really absolutely looking to essentially excel in all aspects of your life. And I'm willing to bet that this is where you are right now in your life. Like most people going through this program here, if you had just good standards, you would not be looking to improve yourself like this, right? So here's the deal here. You have these poor standards at the bottom, and you get absolutely miserable results. Then you have good standards, a big leap up from there, and with those good standards, unfortunately, you still get poor results. And now I talked about these excellent standards, where it probably is where you're living right now, and, again, I'm sure you're trying to live there at least, right? Where you're really working hard, doing everything in life, you're trying to improve yourself. And the problem here, just, the danger with excellent standards is that because the world is so tough right now, sometimes you just don't get excellent results. And what happens? You start saying, what am I doing this for? I'm working harder than everybody else. I'm doing it right. I do everything to the highest level, yet I'm not getting the reward. And eventually, with enough of that pain going on, you'll say, screw it. I'm just going to be good. No point in trying to be excellent because I'm not getting excellent results. So you drop your standards, and what happens? Well, now you're at the level of good standards. What kind of results do you get? You get poor results, and you start getting massive pain. So what do? You're like, oh my God, big mistake. So now you start working twice as hard, right? Trying to get back up to the level of excellent standards. And here's the danger, where if you get hit by that odd curveball in life, wham, hit between the eyes, boom, and you take that massive fall, and you find yourself in a really, really, really bad spot. So the danger is that you have excellent standards, and you can never let those drop. So again, poor at the bottom, huge leap up to good. Then from good, we have this huge leap up to excellent. And here's the beauty. There's actually one more level of standards, and it's not a giant leap above excellence. It's literally 2 millimeters. And those are called extraordinary standards. And that's where you're living that life at, wow, it's like at the highest possible level, where you have everything you want, the love, the passion, the connection, and the money too. In fact, my favorite story for this is the movie Jerry Maguire. Remember the scene when Cuba Gooding's talking about, he goes, the Quan. He's at this thing, I got my Quan. And Jerry's like, what's the Quan? He goes, the Quan, it's not just the money, it's the passion, the love, the connection, the respect, the community, and the money too. The Quan. And that's what excellent standards are all about. And they're worth it. Because the beauty of life, the passion of life, truly, the connection to the people that you love and care about, it comes that higher level, and it's this much, 2 millimeters above where you are right now. So how do you get there? It's very simple. It's typically one distinction. Probably like this course that gives you that extra skill set to get what you want in life, to be able to close at the highest level. Perhaps it's just simply raising your standard, saying, geez, I didn't know it was a higher standard, and to know something that I got to even work a bit harder, never let my guard down. Maybe it was a limiting belief that you had, that you knocked out in the belief section, or you weren't managing your state effectively. Or it could be a combination of everything. But the point is this, from where you are right now to that next level up to extraordinary standards, from where you really gotta be, where you wanna be in life, you're this far away. So the first step to raising your standards is to identify what your current standard is now, in this moment, and let's say in terms of your sales results to start. Well, this goes to all aspects of your life, and then we'll commit to a new standard for your sales and for other aspects of your life as well. Now, the secret to raising your standards is to associate a low standard with ultimate pain and a high standard with ultimate pleasure. So what you have to do is identify essentially what to you represents ultimate pain. And it's very different for every person. Then you have to figure out exactly what represents ultimate pleasure for you. Again, high standards are where your pleasure is, and low standards are where your pain is. See, for me, ultimate pain is being broke, being insignificant, which to me means not being able to share my message. To me, pain is not having the respect of my children, not being in a loving relationship with someone. See, to me, that's ultimate pain. Being broke, being alone, being insignificant, or being sick by myself. I'll do anything to avoid those negative states. What's ultimate pleasure for me? Well, it's wealth, contributing to people, to charity, being with my children, knowing my kids respect me, that they're taken care of, that my partner is taken care of, that essentially everyone's future, people who rely on me and love me, that they're taken care of. My children get sick or I get sick, I'll be able to help them, able to send them to college, to help them start their own lives, their own businesses, to buy first homes. That's ultimate pleasure for me. I mean, to share my message, to empower people. I love doing that. You know, I could be so tired that if I'm on stage or teaching people, I still feel great. I can't tell you how many times I've traveled around the world and I've been jet-lagged and multiple times. I was on the verge of collapse, and I find myself in a place where I'm doing some charity work, going into a township in South Africa or Zambia and working with underprivileged kids, and all of a sudden, bam, I snap out of it and I get re-energized. Why? Because it's something that's so deep and important to me, it brings out the very best in me. It's my standard. I will not settle for less than that. And if part of my ultimate pleasure is to empower people and to train these young kids, man, it's just boom, it turns me on, makes me the best I could possibly be. Let me give you a different take on this for a second here. State management, the ability to manage how you feel in the moment, what that is, it's going to dictate your moment-to-moment success in life. How you can perform in the moment, right? You can be the best athlete in the world, but if you're in a negative, disempowered state, well, you're not going to be a very good athlete, right? As a salesperson, you can be the best salesperson, build a straight line backwards and forwards, but if you're in a state of uncertainty, right, well, how well can you essentially use the straight line? Well, that's in the moment. The opposite would be your standards, which is your long-term dictator of where you end up in life. State management is in the now, and standards is your long-term indicator of where you're going to end up in life. If you have low standards, I promise you, if your life is full of shoulds and not musts, you will end up broke and poverty-stricken and basically alone. If you have high standards, I mean those super high standards like that highest, I'm burning bright, being the best I could be, bam, you're going to have a life full of pleasure and connection and love and all that sort of great stuff that we associate with living life at the highest level. So here's my question. What represents ultimate pain for you? And what represents ultimate pleasure? Now let's take this one step further now and look at how we're going to use this to increase your standards. I want you to write down a new standard for your sales results or your income. Be as specific as possible as you do this. This is the new must for you in this area. It's what you will no longer settle less than. You get it? Now, one final thing as you do this, I want you to read through your old standard and then imagine the pain that it brings you. Imagine how much pain you have from this old standard, that you're not getting what you want in life. You're disappointing the people that matter to you, that you care about most, okay? You take that new standard, imagine yourself, future pace yourself out there, living your new standard, feeling good, acting good, and believe me, if you do that, harnessing pain and pleasure, linking them in your mind, bam, your new standard will become a part of you, become ingrained in your very soul, the core of who you are, and once you raise that standard, boom, you're on the path of success. If you know a bit about my story here, it's like the comeback of the century from the guy who made all the money in the 20s, right? I was, one of the richest guys in America, lost everything, made huge mistakes, was smeared and vilified in the press, went to jail, right? Had to get sober from drugs. I'm 15 years sober, made the money back, redeemed myself, a movie coming out about me with Leonardo DiCaprio playing me, directed by Scorsese, right? All this insanity. You know what that came from? It came from extraordinary standards. It came from me in that moment of truth when I was at literally my lowest point in life of not saying die, of knowing that there was this level up there that if I would just simply make them my musts in life, that I'd get them. And I made sure that any skills I had to learn, like learning to write or whatever it was, to go out there and communicate my message in a different way, whatever it might be, I was willing to do the work, to learn what I had to learn, to associate with people I had to associate with. I did the stuff that matters in the real world to make sure that my standard became a reality. Now, before I close this module, I want to leave you with one more very important concept. And it's one that I know you can relate to in your life. And let me just explain something to you up front here. There are only two paths in life for a person to take. There's the path of reasons, and I call these reason people. These are people who have all the reasons about why they can't get what they want in life, why they can't hit their sales quota, why the leads suck, why everything is wrong. It's reason people. That's one path, the path of reasons. And the second path, which is the path of results. And these are people who find a way no matter what. You have reason people who are literally disempowered, right? And results people who live these empowered, fruitful lives at the highest level. They burn bright. These are the leaders, the movers and shakers of society. You know, I have this story. I call them ducks and eagles. And I look at these ducks as sort of these low-level reason people that kind of spend their whole life, you know, quack, quack, quacking around, and it's like smelly duck pond filled with duck, excuse my expression here, but these ducks live life at the lowest level. And then you have eagles, who are the people that actually find a way. They soar. You have ducks and you have eagles. Now, the hardest thing in the world to do is to turn a duck into an eagle. That's a very, very difficult thing to do. And again, I've done it in the past. It's very hard. It takes like massive work with beliefs and values and all that sort of stuff. But here's the beauty. If you're taking this course right now, as you are, you can't possibly be a duck, because ducks never sign up for courses like this. They will like be, oh my God, no, improvement, no. Why? Because it goes against their reason. See, they have a reason why they're not succeeding. It has nothing to do with them not knowing something. It's everyone else's fault. They're blaming, they're justifying, they're complaining. You get it? Reasons versus results, ducks versus eagles. And again, I want you to nail this ducks-eagles concept into your psychology here, because if you ever see yourself in the moment taking on a duck-like mentalities, which starts with this impossibility notion of what can't be done, you've got to change it immediately. You've got to snap at it. I mean, there are ducks everywhere, and I despise them. You can sniff them out a mile away because they spend 90% of their day wallowing around in this giant duck pond filled with all the other smelly ducks quacking away with that reason after reason after reason of why they can't get what they want in life, why they can't get things done. That's what they spend their lives doing, and you can't influence when you're a duck. Eagles are the ones who influence. Eagles find a way. And just so you know, as I said before, the most difficult thing in the world to do is to turn a duck into an eagle, which is an ancillary benefit, by the way, of you taking that behavioral test in the beginning of this training. It's able to weed out any of the ducks that might have slipped through the cracks here, right? Disguising themselves as eagles, you know, as a sort of business, trying to hide your webbed feet and your ridiculous bill from a true eagle. Anyway, the truth is, I don't need to look at that test to know that you're not a duck. You wouldn't be here right now if you were. You'd have run the other way, or actually waddled the other way, once you realized the straight line was the real deal and could make you rich. Why? Because it's anathema to a duck. So we'll quack out 1,000 different reasons why it won't work for him. And again, that's the story here. You notice the ducks around you. They're everywhere. I run into them personally all the time, all over the world. Here's an example of a typical duck encounter. Big Bear Mountain, July 4th, it's a mountain in California we go skiing, right? It's a big holiday weekend in the United States. It's not the nicest place in the world, but it's, you know, a decent place, somewhat near where I live in Southern California. It's up in the mountains. Anyway, so I rented this very nice cabin in a nice resort up there in Big Bear, and I wanted to take my 2 kids and rent jet skis. And I go down to the front lobby to rent these jet skis, and you can see them outside. They're right there, these 4 jet skis. They're in the dock, right, through the window behind this lady at the counter, right? And it's about 12:20 in the afternoon. And I say to this woman behind the desk, she's a young girl, 20, 22 years old. I say, you know, excuse me, can I please rent those jet skis? And she says, oh, I'm sorry, they're rented. And I'm like, really? I'm like, but they're right there behind you. She says, oh, no, 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 someone's already rented them. I said, for the entire hour? And she goes, yeah, yeah, they're rented for the whole hour. So I said, well, I guess they didn't show up here because it's like, almost 12:30 now. So she says to me, no, no, they're already rented. I said, well, how about this? I said, I have no idea. Did they pay for the jet skis? And she goes, no, they haven't. I said, well, how about this? They didn't pay for the jet skis. Why don't you just let me pay for the whole hour? They're sitting right there, and I'll keep me and my kids will stay right here where you can see us. We'll just do some circles around. And this way, if they come back, you can just give them the jet skis, and I'll pay for the whole hour anyway. And she goes, I'm sorry, they're rented. I'm like, well, she goes, it's the rules. I'm like, oh, no. Quack, quack, the duck, right? Rules. The rules all year from duck people's, this impossibility notion. So I say to her, what you've probably said to other people in the situation. I said, let me speak to somebody else. And she replies, I'm sorry, sir. They're going to tell you the same thing as me. I said, no, no, no. Find me somebody else who doesn't think it can't be done. So just find me someone who believes it's a possibility. So she's like, oh, fine. And she's like, hold on. And she starts walking behind these double doors. And I say, stop. Don't move. And she's like, what? I said, don't go behind those double doors. And she says, why not? I said, there's a duck pond back there. More ducks. I said, go upstairs and find me an eagle. She looked at me like I was crazy. Anyway, the hotel manager came down from upstairs, and sure enough, boom, I got my jet skis in 2 minutes flat because she was an eagle. And this is how the inner game melds with the outer game. See, if you see yourself going into that duck-like mentality ever, especially if you're in front of a prospect, you got to break out of it. Understand this. I know there are no ducks in this training program. You're not a duck. I get that. But what happens is very often is eagles, through the trials and tribulations of lives, we get our wings clipped. Some bad stuff happens, some mistakes, either our own fault sometimes or no fault of our own. Some things happen, bam, you get your wings clipped and you start developing this impossibility notion. You start focusing on the reasons of why you can't get ahead in life, you can't get what you want, and your wings are clipped, and all of a sudden you start acting like a duck. You're still an eagle. The bottom line is this. From this module, your path starts here to being the highest, the best eagle you could possibly be. Your brain is constantly weighing these options and choosing a path you every second of the day. And if you're not moving towards your goal, it's because your standards are not aligned with your actual vision. It's creating some disconnect. You've got to get out of your comfort zone to really succeed in life and to take your sales, your income, and all the areas of your life that are important to you to take them to the next level. You can't let yourself be comfortable with where you are right now and settle for a life that's anything less than you're fully capable of living. And I put this module in this program because I can teach you all the straight line strategies in the world. I can give you every nuance of how to close the sale and take someone down the straight line and literally close anyone who's closable. But if you don't have the inner game stuff, those inner game elements lined up, if you don't have your standards at the highest level to match your vision and that determination, your why to see things through, you're simply not going to follow through for the long term. But the bottom line is this. When you strip away all the crap and all the self-justifying and self-storytelling and any ridiculous reason you've conjured up in your own mind to try to convince yourself that you're settling for anything but the absolute best you could possibly be every day of your life is not even slightly okay. When you strip all that nonsense away, you simply can't deny that extraordinary standards are the gift that every man or every woman gives to him or herself. It's a gift that no one else can ever give you and no one else could ever take away. Listen, people respect people. No, they admire people who have high standards, and they revere them. They want to do business with people like that. The same way people respect people who act like they know what they're talking about, like act like experts, and in fact, who are experts. You can be an expert at the age of 22 years old. Age doesn't matter. You can also have extraordinary standards at 22. Age doesn't matter for that either. At 62 years old, you can have low standards or high standards. Your age only limits you if it's in your mind. And the standard you set for yourself is the insurance policy to make sure that your life doesn't pass you by in a state of mediocrity and averagism. I keep hearing that again and again, that people all over the world, my age, I'm too old, I'm too young, and they use it as an excuse, and it's all crap. It's a story, a reason. It doesn't matter. The so-called old boy network, if there actually is one in your industry, there's nothing this network loves more than to watch a young, hard-working person coming right out of the gates, looking sharp and acting sharp, and someone with high standards at every level, And a successful businessman can sniff that out a mile away. They'll actually do business with you first if they respect your standards and you approach them with conviction. So listen, we haven't met in person yet, but the way you've committed yourself to mastering these modules, it tells me that you and I are at least on some level kindred spirits. And if there's one thing I could promise you, is that you're capable of achieving absolute greatness in any aspect of your life. But you're gonna have to work really, really hard to get it. That's it, you're gonna have to learn every skill you need right now, and you have to take, what you've learned here and really go out there into the field without delay and start taking some serious action and kicking some serious financial butt here. And you owe it to yourself. If you're not doing that, you're shorting only yourself. Life is short. You know how old I am? I'm almost 50. I lived half my life already. Some would say I probably lived 10 lives, actually, or at least a bunch of lives, right? But you know what? And I truly swear this, there are many times when I get that little bit of pang and nervousness that my own life is passing me by. I lived half of it already, more than half of it, most likely. I mean, how many more years do I really have left? How many months do I have left? Who really knows? But whenever I find myself questioning, should I go for something or should I not go for something? Should I work at something? Should I take a chance? I say, damn straight I will. I don't know how long I have left. None of us do. Every year that we have on this earth is a gift. And to go out there and take action and pursue your hopes, your dreams, your vision, everything that's out there for you, it's a gift that you give to yourself. If you're out there just thinking and acting from a place of fear, you're being held back by 1,001 limiting beliefs, and you're holding yourself to some lousy, disempowering standard, okay? You're not living your life at all. You're already dead. You're not a positive example to your family, to the people that you love, to the community that you live in, to the very planet you walk on. You're not being the best that you can be, and you owe it to yourself to be that. Listen, if nothing else, you owe it to yourself and you owe it to your children, if you have any, to set an example to the people around you that living life truly at the highest level is what life is all about. And it's not about hiding behind fear and uncertainty and mediocrity. Listen, average sucks. You hear that? Average sucks. You know what the enemy of great is? It's good. Good is the enemy of great. See, you feel good, so there's not enough pain, so you don't do anything about it to actually get great results. Good sucks. Average sucks. The beauty of life, the quan, the beauty, the passion, the connection, the love, the respect, the community, and the money. That's what extraordinary standards are all about. Not just finding your quan, but actually living your quan. Does it take some extra work in the beginning? Yeah, it does. Some mental fortitude? Yeah. Some determination? You bet it does. Some strategic preparation? It takes that too. And do you need to become reasonably proficient with the straight line system? Yeah. And will it take a bit of time? Yeah. To burn bright in your life, to be the best you can possibly be, and live your quan, that's what life is all about. Everything else is just a mere whiff of life. It's not the full flavor of it. To actually go out there and grasp everything that life has to offer you, to become literally a top producer and to enjoy all the fruits, all the respect that comes along with that, that's what you're truly capable of. Everything else is just your story. You're capable of absolute greatness, and don't you ever, ever forget that. And I'll see you in the next session. Hey, welcome back, and welcome to the module on state management, the key to being the best you can possibly be when it matters most, when the difference between success and failure is dictated by you being at the absolute top of your game. Now, in sales, we face those moments pretty much every single day, and they end up separating the top producers from the rest of the pack. It could be when you're cold calling and your prospect has just picked up the phone, and you need to establish that instant credibility by sounding sharp as a tack, enthusiastic as hell, and as an expert in your field. Or it could be when you're out in the field itself and knocking on doors after the last 50 of them have been slammed in your face one after the next. Or inches away from closing a sale and you're going back and forth with the prospect, overcoming their objections, and you need to transfer that last bit of emotional certainty to your client to get each of those 3/10 to the highest level. That's when state management comes into play. State management, what it basically is, it's your ability to manage your physiological, emotional state in the moment, no matter what's going on around you, so you can then access all the wonderful skills you have, all the training you have, to basically, essentially get the job done at the highest possible level. Now, there are certain emotional states, physiological emotional states, that lead to massive wealth and success. Then there are other states that lead to massive poverty and failure. An example of some of the positive states are certainty for sales, right? Clarity, confidence, courage. And then we have the negative, the disempowering stage, which are uncertainty, fear, greed, overwhelm. See, if you're a salesperson, you're walking all day long feeling overwhelmed, uncertain, and greedy about your client's money, good luck trying to become a huge closer. It's just simply not going to happen. If you walk around, however, feeling confident and clear and with absolute certainty oozing out of your pores, you're pretty much halfway there to becoming a world-class closer, especially when you have the technique itself of the straight line behind you. And now this goes for all aspects of life, not just sales. For example, let's say you're a parent. Now you could be the best parent in the world. You could have read all the parenting books, right? You have the best strategies for parenting. You could love your kids to death so your heart's in the right place. But if you're currently in a state of impatience or anger, then how good of a parent can you actually be in the moment? Not very good. You see, what your state does, it allows you either to access the resources you have or not access the resources you have. The difference between success and failure, and it's especially true in sales, where a state of uncertainty is literally the death of a salesman. See, I don't care how great your sales skills are. If you currently are in a state of uncertainty, you will not be able to close a door. Bottom line, okay? Essentially, what your state does, it dictates how you operate in the moment. So you could be the most talented salesperson in the world, but if you're in a negative, disempowered state, you will not be able to express that talent at any reasonable level. And now here's another example. Who's ever had one of those days where you're just totally out of kilter, where everything you said, everything you did, you were like, I can't believe I said that, I can't believe I did that, I'm such an idiot, right? We've all had those days. And conversely, who's had one of those really good days where you were so on and you were so sharp, you were like, said something, you're like, wow, that was me, I'm pretty good, right? You're almost complimenting yourself. Well, the difference between those good days and bad days, it's not an ability thing, and it's not talent. It's the state that you were in that day, your physiological, emotional state. And when you're in a peak emotional positive state, bam, you're on, you're sharp, you're in flow. And when you're in a negative disempowered state, you can't get out of your own way. I think that most of you are going to kind of really enjoy this module. You'll find it pretty cool because I'll be cutting to a bunch of live footage from a very small event I did specifically for this program. You see, for me to teach you state management at the highest level, I have to actually pop into a peak state myself first and then take you through that process step by step in real time while I'm still in that state. Now, that can be pretty tough to do when you're staring into the lens of a camera. Trust me, I've tried and I failed, okay? I mean, I'm good, but not that good. So instead of struggling for the 10th time to recreate for you what I had done in front of a live audience so many times naturally, I decided to put together a special audience just for this program so I can impart that same level of intensity at you, okay? So it's going to be kind of cool and fun for you because my energy level will be really, really so much higher than when I'm in front of the camera because I'm able to feed off of the audience's energy.
You have, number one, at the top of the whole thing, you have the ability, as a salesperson, is to manage your state, to get into a pumped, peak, positive state of mind. You must train yourself to do this. At Stratton, I was very, very intent on these guys that had to stand up, be pacing around, and I would give meetings every single day with motivation to make sure everyone felt good every single day, and they felt positive, they saw the future, they knew where they were going, and I kept them in a peak, pumped state.
Now, there are three primary elements to effectively managing your state. I've talked about some of these already, but I want to break them down specifically for you right now. Now, the first key element of managing your state is the ability to direct on purpose your mental focus, meaning to be able to choose actively what you decide to focus on and what you decide to ignore. If you focus on your problems, you will crash right into them. You almost attract the things that you focus on. So just imagine, and this is another universal force, that you attract to yourself what you focus on, right? Not from 80,000 miles, right? But when you end up essentially in your immediate area, you focus on stuff that moves towards you. So what happens if you're focusing on all the crap in your life? You become a giant crap magnet. You actually attract crap into your life, right? If you focus on all the good things and all the things that you want, those things will move towards you. So as you saw, if you choose to focus on the negative aspect of what's going on in your life, you're going to end up feeling disempowered and uncertain about yourself. And ultimately, you'll end up attracting more negativity into your life, right? It's that universal law.
And conversely, if you choose to focus on the positive aspects of your life, then you'll end up feeling empowered and certain about yourself. And you'll ultimately attract positive things into your life. It's essentially like begets like. Now, the second part of managing your state is how you use your body, or in more scientific terms, your physiology. You see, there are certain ways we hold our body that instantly put us into a more positive, empowered state. And there are other ways we hold our body that do the exact opposite. They put us into a disempowered state. Now, I want to cut to the live footage here because there's a really cool exercise I want you to watch that illustrates just how powerfully our physiology affects our mental state. So watch this closely and I'll see you in a minute.
Everyone just sit back in your chair, relax, and take a deep breath. Just settle down. I want everyone here to close your eyes for a second, okay? Take a deep breath. I'm not going to hypnotize you, I promise. Don't be barking like a chicken up here, okay? Close your eyes, okay? And I want everyone just to think of a time in their life when they were in a sort of a low energy state. Like not a sad time, but like a negative time when you felt bored. And everyone just slump your shoulders over. Slump them over. Maybe drop your head down for a second. And try to just think of a time you were bored and lacked energy and lacked motivation. Go to a specific time in your life and see what you were seeing at that moment, where you were, who you were associated with. There's a time where you felt maybe like a loser a bit, not a good time. Just give that a couple of seconds here. And then as you're doing that, I want you to just really slump your shoulders and drop your head. Now pick up your head real quick, okay? Shake your head a little bit. Shake it off for a second, okay? Just think about pink elephants flying through the air. Don't think about pink elephants. If you thought about pink elephants, okay? Anyway, anyone get that sort of negative, who felt a little bit negative when they started like getting to that negative? So you ever feel a little down energy there, right? You feel down energy, right? Now I want you to try this. I want you to look up at the ceiling, look up at the ceiling and smile at the ceiling. Smile broadly at the ceiling, and now think of something really, really sad while you're smiling. Who's having trouble thinking of something sad? Stop, put your head down. Who had trouble thinking of something sad while they were smiling? It's very hard. What happens is your physiology and your mind, your focus, are intertwined with one another. It's very hard to look up to look and smile and think unhappy thoughts. The same way, it's very hard to try to think of happy moments and sit there and be sad. Like if I said to you right now, for $10,000, there's a person behind that door, by the screen, a depressed person. For $10,000, is their head up or down? Which one? Down. Are they have their shoulders back or are their shoulders curled forward? Forward. Are they breathing deeply or shallow? Shallow, right? Everyone says the same thing. We didn't set this up, right? And it's not an Australian thing. It's not an Asian thing or a US thing. It's a human thing, okay? Now I want you to look up at the ceiling, smile at the ceiling, and think of a really happy moment. Okay, now look down, and who found it easy to find a happy moment now? Right, you did. It's called being congruent. When your physiology, your body, the way you move your body, matches what your focus is, what you're thinking about, it tends to create the emotion that you want very easily. Your focus and your physiology creates an emotion. When there's dissonance, when they're hitting against each other, when you're trying to think of something positive but your body's negative, they don't work. Okay, so you can see from that exercise that logically one of the first things you need to do if you want to pop into an empowered state is to start moving your body differently. It's one of the most critical elements of state management, to be completely conscious of your own physiology in as much as how you're actually holding yourself, your shoulders, your head, your eyes, your own breathing, in fact. You need to be completely certain that the way your current physiology is congruent with what puts you in an empowered state and not a disempowered state, which will make it nearly impossible to pop into one. In other words, if your physiology is wrong, it's very, very difficult to pop into that peak empowered state. Okay? Now, the third element of state management is actually a result of the first two, and it's the emotion that you feel, which is created from being, number one, very selective about what you choose to focus on in your life, right? You focus on the good things
and you'll end up feeling good about yourself. Bad things, you feel bad about yourself, right? And number two, being not just aware, but almost vigilant of how you're holding your body and your overall physiology that you've adopted to make sure that it supports the triggering of a peak empowered state. So, what are the ideal states we need to cultivate to become a really effective salesperson? Well, there are 4 of them in all, and I call them the 4 C's. There's certainty, number 1, and there's clarity, which is number 2. Then we have confidence, number 3. Then there's courage, which is number 4. Now, when you learn how to trigger those 4 states at will, you'll essentially always have your best physical and mental resources available to you when they matter most at those crucial times of the sale. And of course, conversely, if you spend most of your time in the 4 opposite states, which are uncertainty, overwhelm, self-doubt, and fear, right, you won't be able to close a door.
There are certain states, physiological states, that lead to success in sales. Certainty, clarity, confidence, courage, the C's. If you're in a state of certainty, confidence, clarity, courage, you got a great shot. You open yourself up to win. Then there are states of uncertainty and fear and negativity and greed. Those are your disempowering states. If the empowering states, right, empowered are certainty, unempowered, disempowered is what? Uncertainty, right? So a salesman that walks around all day long in a state of uncertainty and negativity, how good do you think they can close that day? Not too good. What your state does, it allows you to access the resources you have. Now, it allows you to access the resources you have in the moment so you can be the best you can possibly be. Or a disempowered state stops you from being able to access the wonderful resources you have, causing you to not succeed. In other words, you could be the greatest technical straight line salesperson in the world, but if you're walking around all day long in a state of uncertainty and fear and negativity and overwhelm, how good of a salesperson are you going to be? You can't close a door when you're in a state of fear and uncertainty. On the highest level, you know what sales is? On the highest level, sales, straight line or any type, it's the transference of emotion. And the emotion of transference is certainty. Certainty. It's the transference of certainty from one person, meaning the salesperson, who's so certain that you could benefit from his product, to the prospect who needs the product, who's not that certain, and the salesman overwhelms him and transfers his certainty through language, through body language, through tonality, through patterns, and he makes that person so certain, the person says what? Yes. Their certainty exceeds their action threshold, which is their sort of resistance towards buying. So as a salesperson, that certainty, the overwhelming certainty that exudes out of every pore of your body, that comes through in your language, your tonality, your enthusiasm and expertism and authority figure, sharp as attack. It's why those emotions are so powerful. You transfer that certainty onto your salesperson, using all the straight line process of looping and this and that, but at the highest level, it's emotion.
Now let's talk about the 5 key modalities of how we as human beings make sense of the world around us. Now, the reason this is so important is that these 5 modalities are the essential building blocks of how I'm going to teach you to manage your state at the highest possible level. Now, again, let's cut to the live footage just for a minute here so I can give you the basics, and I'll elaborate on them afterwards.
We have 5 senses. Here's how we make sense of the world. Very simple. Okay, we have visual, auditory, visual, what we see, auditory, what we hear, kinesthetic, what we feel. We have gustatory, what we taste. Okay, and we have olfactory, what we smell. 5 senses. Visual, auditory, kinesthetic, gustatory, olfactory, smell. Now we have these in 2 ways. We have visual, what we see. I see you, that's visual. Also, I close my eyes and I visualize what I've already seen or can simply make up my own pictures. Everyone get that? So you have visual in the real world and visual remembered. Different types of modalities. I have auditory, I hear myself speaking, I can hear you speaking to me, and also I can close my eyes, I have an internal dialogue. I have an own internal dialogue. I hear myself speaking. As if you read my books, I got 3 or 4 dialogues going at any given time, right? Who has internal dialogue? Raise your hand if you have of course you do, right? Or you could simply remember something that someone said to you. You can remember the words and hear them in your mind's eye, your mind's ear, right? So you have visual, auditory, remembered, and in the world. Kinesthetic, what I feel. I pick up this, I feel the chair, I feel my arm, or I get a gut feeling inside. Same, right? Visual in the world, visual what I feel. I remember a feeling I once had. Very important for this, right? Okay? And then you have gustatory, which of course is important now. You have gustatory, which is taste. And that doesn't just, doesn't come into play that often in the world, unless you're a chef. What you taste doesn't really, for eating it's important, but day to day it doesn't really impact you that much. And then, of course, olfactory, which is what you smell. And if you're a human being, typically you're a visual or auditory dominant, and some people are kinesthetic, they're feeling people. This is how humans, we use VAK, visual, auditory, kinesthetic. Olfactory is great if you're a Labrador Retriever or a Beagle, okay? But of course, smell, and here's the interesting part, smell is the most powerful of all your senses. In terms of who's ever had it? So you smell, like one molecule of a smell can bring you back to your grandmother's room or a room. You can walk in somewhere and smell, oh my God, and you're like, in that instant, you're like, oh my God, it's a rush. Who's ever had that? Right? It's very powerful olfactory.
Great, you're back. Now, again, everyone actually has a dominant modality. Some people, in fact, actually have 2 modalities that are dominant. Personally, I'm very strong in the visual department. I make very clear pictures in my head, and I tend to almost think in pictures. Now, typically, people who are visually oriented, they move their hands a lot. As you see, I move my hands a lot, right? And they use phrases like, I see what you're saying, or let me see how I feel, and I'll get back to you. They basically describe the world around them in visual terms. And they're usually quick talkers because what they're doing is they're narrating the pictures that are flying through their brains, almost like they can't keep up with their own thoughts. That's a visual. Then you have actually number 2, which is people who process the world mostly through what they hear. They're called auditory dominance. And by the way, even though my visual modality is very, very strong, I'm also very strong as an auditory person. Essentially, I rely on both of those to make sense of the world around me. I have a very powerful internal dialogue, and I also listen very closely to what other people are saying, and I process it constantly. So I'm both visual and I'm auditory. Then you have some people who are actually kinesthetics, the so-called feelers, okay? And they process the world by how they feel. And it's a funny story because I'm actually in a relationship with a woman who's a feeler. And just imagine, someone like me who's a talker, right? The visual talker. I'm moving my hands. I see this, I see that. And she's like, I feel this, I feel like. Sometimes we have a talk and it's like we're not actually understanding each other and we're saying the same thing. She'll say like, I met this person, I bounced my radar off. I'm like, oh my God, she bounced her radar. What she's really saying is that, what I'm saying is, I saw that person and I got this, sense by looking at them, the body language of what they said. She calls it her radar. So just understand why this is so important, because when you're in a situation of influence, and let's say you're a visual and you're trying to influence a feeler, okay, remember to slow yourself down, to start talking more in feeling terms, right? Like I feel this way, and you lower your voice a bit less hand gestures. It's very important that when you're looking to get into rapport with someone, that you try to figure out very quickly
what is their dominant modality? Are they a visual? Are they an auditory? Are they kinesthetic? And usually, you'll find a lot of visuals out there, and you also find a lot of feelers as well. But know which one you're dealing with and almost try to, skew your own communication style to match them. And if you do that, you'll find yourself falling into an unconscious rapport with this person at a very, very deep level. Now, all of these things I've been speaking about, they all make up a body of psychology you may have heard of called Neurolinguistic Programming, or NLP for short. And NLP, what it does basically is it deals with specifically how people make change in their lives and how to actually make sure those changes last. And when NLP is used correctly, it can be an incredibly potent tool for making changes in your own life, and specifically in this context, when it comes to learning how to manage your own state through the process of anchoring. And just so you know, I liken NLP to almost like an incredibly sharp sword. Like there was this movie I loved called Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and they had this magical sword, right? And the sword was, invented thousands of years ago, a lost art. No one could have this sword anymore. But if the wrong person wielded the sword, it wasn't all that powerful. But in the hands of a highly trained expert, the sword becomes an almost magical weapon. Well, the same is true of NLP. NLP can be incredibly effective when used by the right person, and also if someone shows you how to integrate certain aspects of NLP into your own life. But that's a very, very rare thing. I had the benefit myself of actually training directly with the person who founded the body of psychology of NLP, a man named Dr. Richard Bandler. And I spent a lot of time with Dr. Bandler, thankfully, and he blew me away. And what I came away with is this. In many ways, NLP is almost about stating the obvious about the world around us, the way it operates, how we make sense of the world. But there are two distinct aspects of NLP that I found to be unbelievably effective at helping me make changes in other people, specifically salespeople. And the first one is this process of anchoring and how it relates to state management. That's an NLP-based process, which I actually then take it up another level by some of my own experiences using a sense of smell, and we'll get there. Okay? So it's very, very powerful. And the second process is in the changing of some of your core beliefs. Where you actually take some of your old limiting beliefs that have been holding you back from achieving the success you're truly capable of, and we root them out using an NLP process, and we actually replace them with empowering beliefs of your choice that allow you to essentially propel yourself to massive success in sales. So the question is, how do you actually train your body to go into the states that you want to be in more often, meaning those empowered states? And the answer is very simple. You learn to do it through a process called anchoring. And what anchoring means essentially is to lock in, or to deeply anchor in, as the phrase goes, a state that serves you so deeply, in fact, that it almost becomes part of who you are. So you can then trigger that anchor, or fire off the anchor, as the phrase goes, which is the same as saying triggering a peak state at will. To put it simply, all an anchor is basically a learned association between a specific state and a specific trigger. Let me give you a quick example. You've probably heard of Pavlov's dogs, right? It's an experiment done many years ago by a Russian psychologist named Pavlov, and he trained these dogs to salivate every time they heard a dinner bell, even in the absence of food. Now, the way he did this was by simultaneously ringing a dinner bell every time he fed them a piece of meat. And he did this again and again and again, more than 100 times, in fact. So he fed them some meat, rang a bell, fed them meat, rang a bell, fed meat, rang a bell, right? And eventually, he could just ring the bell, and the dogs would start to salivate even in the absence of meat. It was the anticipation of the coming meat that caused the response, okay? Now, the bell in this case is what's called the anchor. And when you ring the bell, it's called firing off your anchor. And the good news is that while we're not dogs, we can use this process for ourselves to trigger any particular state we want, regardless of how we're feeling at that moment. In other words, we can set anchors for ourselves for things like confidence and clarity and certainty. So even if we're not actually feeling those things, we can actually fire off our anchor and trigger those empowering states at will. And the best news of all about this, by the way, is that unlike drugs, which you typically need more and more of to get the same effect, it's the exact opposite when it comes to anchoring. You see, when you fire off an anchor,
the more you do it, the easier it gets to fire it off and the more powerful the response is. So that being said, let's cut to the live footage now and I'll show you exactly how to set an anchor for yourself. And I'll see you in a few minutes. So when I started getting into neurolinguistic programming with Bandler, what the basic way of, it's called anchoring, is where you actually learn to trigger an emotion that you want by setting what's called an anchor. Let's say I want to, at any time I want, get into a peak state of certainty. I want to feel certain. So what I do, okay, is I go back to a moment in my life and I get myself feeling absolutely certain about what happened 5 years ago or 10 years ago. For me, here's my anchor. I go back to the night that I invented the straight line. It was that night that I drew that straight line on the board and said, don't you guys get it? Every sale's the same. There's an open, there's a close. And I remember looking out at the people, and I go back to that moment, and I imagine what I was wearing, how I was feeling, and I close my eyes, and I actually squeeze my fists so I feel my own fingernails digging in, and I say yes, and I just go back and I get myself feeling as I felt. I look out through my own eyes and I see what I was seeing. The people sitting in front of me, hear what I was saying. I watch their heads nodding and like, oh my God, like, and I was in flow. I get that unbelievable, give myself that feeling of being in charge and knowing. When I knew I cracked the code. I knew that night, I said, I got it. I know how to train these people. I can do it. I'm going to be rich. And I went on and on for hours, and everyone was writing it down and writing stuff down. And I get myself really worked up into that moment. I say yes, and I say yeah, and I walk around in a room. Before I give a seminar, I'll say yes, and I go back and I say act as if, and I'll smack my hand into mine. I'll create a noise for myself alone. Then I'll go into one of my own language patterns that I had. Act if you're wealthy, man, rich already, you become rich. Act, and I get myself, everyone see what I do? I get myself pumped up, and I say yes. And I smack my own, my anchor for certainty. We all have an anchor. We're feeling certain. Some people do this, some people do this, some people do this, I do this. Everyone's different, okay? And I say yes. And then what I do is I take this thing here, it's this really pungent smell that I found, and I go, that's right, and I go yes, and I get this wild smell. And as soon as that smell touches my brain, boom, I'm back to where I was that first night when I invented the straight. I actually added this on afterwards. The beautiful thing about your brain, you can change and add things on. You can change your memory. You can strengthen a memory. You can make it better than it was. And unlike drugs, which become less and less over time, this becomes more powerful. The more you do it, the stronger the anchor becomes. Everyone get that? Who's ever been in a car and got pulled over by the cops? Raise your hand. When you first heard that sound, what did you do? Boom, boom, boom. Your heart was beating before your mind even knew what happened. Instantly, your blood, that's an anchor. So what I have done now, by repetition and training, I've actually got it to the point now where I could be sitting in my room in a low energy, neutral state, and you go, yes, and go, and bam, I'm absolutely certain. So I say to myself, here's what I do. I say, well, I have two options. Either I can A, give a seminar, give a pub, I do keynotes all over the world, right, for companies. So I can do that and walk on stage and hope that I'm going to feel really good that day. I can give a seminar like this and hope I'm on that day. I hope I'm having a good day. Or I could take out any possibility and I trigger my anchor. Everyone get that? See, my commitment to excellence in my life is I'm not going to leave it up to chance. I'm going to tip the odds in my favor. There's so much in sales, guys, that we can't control. We can't control the quality of our leads. We can try, but there's going to be bad leads. You can't control what's happening in the stock market. You can't control what's happening with the financial product you're selling. You can't control almost anything in this world, but what you can control is the state that you're in before you pick up that phone or before you walk in the door. So I say to myself, why leave it up to chance? I want to tip the odds in my favor. So I anchor myself into a peak state of certainty, of clarity, of confidence, courage every single time.
Okay, so let's get specific now. I'm going to show you step by step exactly how to trigger a peak state of absolute certainty and absolute confidence at will. Now, you're probably going to want to go to a place where you have some privacy right now, so you can go through this exercise and play full out without feeling embarrassed or feeling weird. So if you need to pause the video for a second, then please do it now. Otherwise, let's dive right in. We'll go to the live footage, and I'll see you in a few.
Do is teach you how to do that right in the room here in 10 minutes. We'll have a bit of fun. Now, just so you know, this is one of those situations here where, you have to kind of play full out. The way it works is that if you want to set yourself an anchor for anything, it's called setting an anchor for you of certainty. If you want to do it, you have to get to the top of the emotion. We can't do it by just kidding around saying, yes, yes, yes. Doesn't work. So I want you right now, don't worry about how you look, because you're going to look a little foolish, but we all will look foolish together. And I want you to essentially act like a kid. Just for the rest of this day, act like a kid. Kids are the best learners. They learn unbelievably. You know why? Because when kids learn something, they just dive into it. They use their whole body. When you ever have this in the rain and you see like an old person, I don't mean old in age, chronology, an old person, when they're walking along, there's a puddle, what does an old person do? They walk around, and also they bitch about it too. What does a kid do? When bam, the kid will jump right in the puddle and get himself wet. Okay, that's why kids are the greatest learners of all, because they just go in there full with their body and bam, they attack life. Since we were all of us were unstoppable when we were born. And then came day 2 of our lives. We started getting insulted and told we weren't great, told we weren't capable. Along the way, we were conditioned down for mediocrity. We were all born great. So just for today, in this room, let's just act like kids. Who's willing to act just for today? Raise your hand, you'll act like kids for today, right? Anybody? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone against it? Motion carried. Good. So everyone stand up real quick here. Okay, and I'm going to lead this charge here. And what I want you guys to do is everyone take a deep breath here and stand the way you stand when you're certain. Just stand straight. Like, watch, look at me. This is certain. This is not certain. This is normal. This is certain. Chest out, shoulders back, and just squeeze your hands together and just say to yourself very quietly, yes, yes. And go back into a time right now when you were sailing something and you just were feeling absolutely certain. Go back to that moment in life when you were feeling absolutely certain and take a deep breath. And I want you to see what you were seeing. I want you to hear what you were hearing, feel what you were feeling. And when I count to 3, I want you to squeeze your fists and say yes. 1, 2, 3. Yes. A bit louder now. 1, 2, 3. Yes. A bit louder. 1, 2, 3. Yes. A bit louder. 1, 2, 3. Yes. Now we're going to take the boom boom out. Take a quick 1-on-1 with the boom boom. And now let that bathe your olfactory nerves and take a deep breath and squeeze your fists and smell that smell and say yes. 1, 2, 3. Yes. 1, 2, 3, yes! Now I want you to go back to another time in your life when you were feeling so in the flow as a salesperson. Just sit there and see what you were seeing. Step inside your body on that particular day. Squeeze your fists. And let that smell, it's still there on your nose. Just smell that smell and just think about closing someone, that feeling right after you close the sale. When you were just saying, damn, I was good. And see what you were seeing, feel that rush of the emotion and how the words were tumbling off your lips and say, yes. 1, 2, 3, yes. 1, 2, 3, yes. Now open your eyes and I want you to make a move. When you're certain, we all do something. I want you to make the move that you make. When you're certain, what do? You say yes. Everyone make a move and say yes. 1, 3, yes. 1, 2, 3, yes. Squeeze your fist and say yes. Now make a move. 1, 2, 3, yes. Louder. 1, 2, 3, yes. 1, 2, 3, yes. 1, 2, 3, yes. Another boom boom. Take another shot of it. Okay. I want you to sit down now and close your eyes till it burns your nostrils. Get it locked in. Sit down for a second now. Okay? Close your eyes, and I want you to let that smell bathe your nose. I want you to go back to that moment, and again, go to a moment in time when you were absolutely certain. And I want you to flex your chest sitting down. You can still do it. Put your shoulders back, and see what you were seeing. And give yourself the benefit. It's the gift you give yourself, this feeling of being absolutely certain, having total courageousness and confidence, clarity in your life, and just, you walked in the door and while the words were tumbling and you just were closing like the best you've ever closed in your entire life, and just see what you were seeing. See yourself acting exactly the way you want to act. Exactly the words that were coming out of perfect words. And squeeze your fists gently, and then tighter now, and tighter still, and very quietly at 3, just whisper, yes. 1, 2, 3, yes. Again, 1, 2, 3, yes. A bit louder now. 1, 2, 3, yes. Louder still. 1, 2, 3, yes. Louder again. 1, 2, 3, yes. Take the boom boom out again. Okay? I know it seems weird, but it works, guys. I'm telling you. 1, 2, 3. Oh, boy. Another one. 1, 2, 3. Yes. No, the boom. Everyone stand up one more time, okay? Do it. Ready. When I count to 3, everyone make whatever your move is. Just make any move when you're certain, okay? Whatever makes you, you could be clenching your fists, banging, whatever, on your chest, some people hit themselves. 1, 2, 3, yes. 1, 2, 3, yes. Louder. 1, 2, 3, yes. 1, 2, 3, yes. Louder again. 1, 2, 3, yes. Take another shot of the boom boom. And give yourself a big round of applause here, everybody. Give yourself a round. Take a seat. Now listen, I know that seems really wacky and weird, but listen to me. You ever have a guy working in your office or a girl who was an incredibly talented closer, but they had really great days and bad? They could never have any consistency because their emotions were running wild. Their lives were a mess. This is what so many salespeople, they're talented, they can learn how to close, but they never can learn to manage their own emotions. This is the gift, learning how to trigger a state of certainty. It's the gift that you give yourself. And if you have a sales force, it's the gift that you give to your entire sales force, by the way. If you're managing a sales force, you own a company, get all your people in a peak state when they're on the phone or walking that door, bam, it's very, very effective. This is the inner game. To really know at the deepest level where you want to go in life, to have your vision for the future, to get yourself in a peak state so you can access all the wonderful resources that you're learning here to be the best you can be, to get rid of those limiting beliefs about yourself and money, to replace them with empowering beliefs, and raise your standards. We'll go through that this afternoon, raising your standards for excellence. And you ensure your success that way. The straight line, guys, it's easy. It's practice, okay? It's just practice makes perfect, okay?
Hey, welcome back. Now, I know that might have kind of seemed a bit weird to you, but I promise you that it's definitely worth it. For my part, I don't really care how I look. I mean, I'd rather look weird and uncool and be rich and successful than look suave and cool and be broke and desperate. See my point? It's pretty much on target. Anyway, the key to success with this process is just to keep practicing it. You practice every day, and you start using it when you're out selling in the field or on the phone. And trust me, it'll get easier and easier over time, and ultimately, you'll be at that point where it will basically be second nature to you. And also, don't forget to go into those critical incident scenarios. They're crucial in helping you drive things in deeper so they eventually become part of you. So go through them now and then practice, 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 and I promise you, your results in the field will literally soar. We'll talk again soon.